Howdy y'all, and welcome back to This Week in WoW. I hope you all have had a good week. I've had a good week, and I'll tell you all about it. Also I'm going to include in this particular episode my thoughts on the paid add-on thing that I said I'd come out with an opinion piece, but then I got caught up in Mythic Plusing this week, and didn't actually come out with it, so I'll include that here, so this will be a long one. I have learned how to do chapters, so you can look in the time tags if a certain aspect, if you like the Mythic Plus or the paid add-on commentary or whatever doesn't interest you, you can see, click around down there. And our footage is because I'm raiding, guys. No, I haven't actually started raiding again, but my friend was like, they were down a healer, so they asked me if I wanted to come help them, and I helped their raid team get their first normal sludge fist kill. That took a few pulls. He one-shot Stone Legion generals, which was really fun, and then I think Sardenathrius took us 4 pulls, but it was cool to see the raid and get the memories I was missing. So that's our footage for the day, but I'm not becoming a raider, don't worry. Let's see here. So, me being me, the other stuff I've been doing is, of course, Mythic Plus. I had, I think last week was when I'd said that I was shooting for 1K. Well, I not only hit 1K, but I shot past it and I'm a little bit over 1100 now. I'm 1103, I think. It's actually been a really tough week, particularly for things like Plaguefall due to Tyrannical. I've had to, and I'm trying out a new build that I think Growl was the one who was talking about it. There's a build for Mythic Plus Resto Druids that kind of relies more on things like Flourish. So you can use Flourish and set up a blanket of hots. You set up the blanket of hots and then you use Flourish, which keeps things stable so you can then go into a more DPS-oriented playstyle and use your Convokes for DPS. And I'd been thinking, I'm having so much trouble keeping people up in these higher keys. The last thing I can afford to do is do more DPS, but it's actually worked out really well because, as intended, with a good Flourish out, that keeps everyone alive, and then my DPS will help us kill whatever the danger mob is a lot faster. So that's been really good, and I've really been enjoying the build a lot. It also helps that I have gained, I think, very nearly 10 item levels this week. I got some great upgrades. Nothing super notable other than finally getting an offhand to go with the main hand that's been sitting in my bank. My Great Vault options were pretty terrible, but this week, now that I did a 15 and a few 14s, so I will have at least 2, possibly 3 226 options on Tuesday, so there will be hopefully some nice stuff to choose from in there. I've also been doing a few keys on my alt shaman, and it's been a little bit rough, not that there's anything wrong with the shaman, but my gear right now is 184 on the shaman, I think, and my friend who I've been leveling with, her gear, I think, she did even less than I did, so I think she's around, 176 or something like that, and she's like, let's do 6s, whenever we get together with, a group of friends, she're like, all right, what key do we have, and she wants to do whatever the highest key is in our bags at the time is, rather than all right, well, we're at around the level of 3s, so maybe we should do 3s and get the gear from the 3s before we do the 6s. And, which, honestly, we probably could do the 6s if people didn't also stand in a lot of tyrannical mechanics, because it's kind of an interesting situation. There's this kind of weird middle ground where, if the keys are lower, they're often harder, not because the keys are mechanistically harder, but because you're going to be pugging with the people who can only do low keys. And there's a reason that they only pug low keys, you know what I mean? So they typically don't do mechanics as well. And of course, there's all sorts of people in the mix there. There could be very good players as well. But it makes for some very rough keys at times, which in certain aspects, especially fortified keys, I could just heal through, but tyrannical, there's certain things that if people don't do the boss mechanics right, there's just nothing I can do for them. But with some great score gains on the mains and Great Vault pretty much sorted for the week, I think that, we're finishing up Alt Torghast tomorrow being Monday, which is probably today by the time you see this, and we're going to do some Alt keys as well to get some Alt Great Vault stuff going on. That's all on my Horde server. Still not really doing anything on the Alliance server. I don't think that I'll transfer Fade off, but I do feel that for all intents and purposes, other than logging in to do crafts to make gold, there's really not much for me on my Alliance server anymore on Argent Dawn, which is sad since I spent so much time there, but like no one really ever does stuff with me over there, so it is what it is. But that is where Fade, who is a Kyrian, is. So she's my maxed Kyrian. And then, of course, my druid is Night Fae, and my shaman is currently Venthyr. The rest of shamans for Mythic Plus can be either Venthyr or Necrolord. I'd leveled as Necrolord, but then switched to Venthyr just because the activated ability is easier to manage as Venthyr. Like, it's kind of like, you'll have a relatively similar throughput for either one, but there's like some more like Galaxy Brain gameplay you could do with the Necrolord one. But if you don't want to get super pro at that, just go Venthyr and you'll still be fine, sort of a thing. Basically, it gives you a red chain heal that does even more healing versus the Necrolord thing that, like, you cast it and then it has something to do with Riptide. I forget because I haven't had it in so long. But anyways, it involves some gameplay with Riptide. I think it's like, you cast this, which is itself a heal on your target, and then the next healing wave heals all of your targets of your Riptide as well, or something like that. So if you blanket with Riptide, it's very strong. And then if you have the legendary that causes extra Riptides, which I do, because that's the Mythic Plus Resto Shaman legendary for the most part, then there's some synergy there. So, but I'm like, you know what? It's my alt. I don't want to worry about it, so I just went Venthyr. So I've done those 3 Covenant campaigns. I'm all caught up to where we can be in the story for all 3 of those. I still haven't got a maxed Necrolord for their Covenant, but I have to get on that. I do love that the outfits are really coming together, though, on all these characters. Alright, so that's the Mythic Plus and, my week in WoW sort of a thing. Let's kind of do the more opinion piece that kind of came up with the Mythic Dungeon situation. Even though it has, for the most part, been resolved at this point. But since I said I'd share my opinions, I feel like I still should. This is an opinion, it's not the right answer, and my opinions can certainly change. However, here's kind of my take on the situation. There are of course two different conversations to have about this. It's like whether or not you agree with what Nagi did with Mythic Dungeon tools, and a more general sense of whether or not you think that like it's okay to charge for add-ons. And because I think that that's one of the big problems that's kind of come up in this is people have been like, oh man, I can't believe Nagi did this. What a jerk. And then you'll see people responding to them saying, developers should be paid for their time. You guys are just so entitled. And it's like, did you see the video where Nagi called? Okay, so there's going to be some profanity here in the next 10 seconds. So if you don't want to hear profanity, pause it or mute it for 15 seconds. But there's a video of Nagi. Someone asked about MDT updates and he called them a fucking cunt, and he threatened to put MDT behind a paywall, which is why people knew it was going to happen and why there was a fork so quickly. Like, he went off in an incredibly offensive and aggressive way towards people who were admittedly being entitled and pushy. So let me tell you what actually happened. So Race to World First, Nagi is streaming because he is of course part of that whole production, and people are in his chat pestering him for MDT updates, when obviously he's focused on the Race to World First. He can't just be updating his add-ons constantly. MDT, at that point in time, there were some problems with it, but for all intents and purposes, it did function. I don't think it was appropriate for people to harass him. I don't think it's, I agree that people were being entitled towards MDT and towards Nagi, and that can be seen as incorrect, or that can be seen as poor behavior on their part. I don't disagree with that. However, he responded incredibly poorly, because what he could have done, if that was such a problem for him, let's pretend that he is required to stream. I'm not sure if he is or not. However, what with all of his affiliations and how commercialized the World First stuff will have become, I would not be surprised if he is contractually obligated or incredibly pressured to stream. So So let's pretend that he had to stream. Let's just stipulate that he had to stream. He couldn't just choose to not stream during this. Well, he can turn off chat. And you can, if chat was bothering him that much, just turn off chat. You can still stream without having chat on. And you can say, well, I mean, what's stream without chat? People go there to be able to interact and stuff like that. That's where a lot of the revenue comes from. It's like, all right, well, you can keep the chat on, but you can just put a moderator. You can ban certain words. Just it's built into Twitch. You don't even need to add in any extra like software. You can ban certain words, so he can just ban like update and add-on and MDT, or you can use something like I think it's called Nightbot, that people can type, exclamation point MDT and get a prepackaged, pre-canned response about what's going on with MDT. And so what he did was he chose to be streaming with chat on, with non-moderated chat, without banning the words that were bothering him, and he continued to watch chat. And I think that maybe the person had donated, because oftentimes when you donate, you can send little messages with your donation. So that's how a lot of times people will try to get the streamer's attention, is they'll, send a $5 donation, and it'll be like, I don't know if this is what it said, but it's like, hey Nagi, when are you updating MDT? Or update your add-on, damn it, or something like that. I don't know. And so even if they used that to bypass chat or to bypass some sort of moderation, it's like, he still behaved badly in response. Should people have harassed him? No, of course not. But does that make the way that he responded appropriate? No, not in the slightest. He behaved incredibly poorly, and the community was very unhappy with that. You can say people were entitled for expecting the add-on for free, but what he did was he created a resource that people tended to rely very heavily on, and we are very accustomed as WoW players who have been using things like DBM and LVY and things for years. Like, the idea that we have to pay for basic functionality of an add-on is not something that the community is going to accept easily, particularly when it's forced because someone is having a tantrum as opposed to introduced in a more diplomatic way. Additionally, if you actually read the terms of, or I think it's the add-on policy, it's not terms of service, but the add-on policy, what he did was absolutely against the add-on policy's rules. He can't charge for add-ons, and he seemed to attempt to skirt this issue by saying, well, I'm not charging for the add-on, but I am, offering extra information, aka the information that would make MDT work properly, in exchange for Patreon donations or Twitch subscriptions. However, that is also banned in the add-on policy. It's point number 2 that keeps him from being able to charge for add-ons, and it's point number 5 that keeps add-ons from being able to ask for donations. So, he not only just he behaved poorly, he introduced something that people were not going to be happy about in a poor way, and he double or triple broke the add-on policy. So of course there was an uprising against it, right? Don't harass creators. He didn't deserve harassment before. He didn't deserve harassment after. You vote with your downloads. You vote with your dollars. And I'll get back to this in the next little discussion bit, but when I was upset with with TSM's development as well as their team, I stopped paying for premium because I didn't harass SapU. I don't think. I hope he doesn't feel harassed. I didn't threaten the team. I just, I said, this is what I don't like about it, and I stopped paying for it. That's how you show support or lack of support for an add-on project. Does he deserve death threats or harassment? No, not at all. But given the way that the internet works, particularly if we're talking about huge audiences on Twitch and things like that, if you're going to do something that is going to be so poorly received and you're going to do it in such a terrible way, I'm not saying you deserve backlash, but you would be stupid to not expect the backlash that he saw. Bottom line, everyone behaved poorly. I'm glad that MDT is back. I'm glad that, I hope that Nagi is finding a little bit more peace now that everything's sorted. I hope that, apparently this is the second world first race in a row that he's had some sort of meltdown. I hope that he considers that and determines what's best for him. I'm not his therapist, obviously, so I can't say what is best for him, but I hope whatever it is, he finds it. So that's the MDT specific, specific to this situation opinion. Let's talk about add-ons, paying for add-ons in general, because of course, TSM is kind of something that we're all pretty familiar with that has an optional thing that you can pay for. So let's pull up the add-on policy here. Okay, I've pulled it up, and I think I said that point 2 was violated by asking for money, and that's actually point 1. So here are some important add-on policies. Point 1, all add-ons must be distributed free of charge. Developers may not create premium versions of add-ons with additional for-pay features, charge money to download an add-on, charge for services related to the add-on, or otherwise require some form of monetary compensation to download or access an add-on. So that's point number 1. Point number 5, also relevant. Add-ons may not solicit donations. Add-ons may not include requests for donations. We recognize the immense amount of effort and resources that go into developing an add-on. However, such requests should be limited to the add-on website or distribution site and should not appear in the game. So, these are kind of interesting points, and I was wondering if all of this buzz around the add-on policy and charging for add-ons created by the MDT situation would catch some other add-ons in their wake. While I have no particular examples of add-ons that ask for donations in the add-on themselves, and thus many tend to not have that problem, with all the add-ons out there, I bet that there's some developers who have missed that little bit and are asking for or have a Patreon link in their add-on. But either way, that's not really what mostly came to mind. What mostly came to mind is, of course, TSM Premium, which I'm not about to complain about. I recorded recently, as part of this, I'd mentioned earlier in this recording that I stopped paying for TSM Premium as part of a way to vote with my dollars. I don't think I cut that out of the recording, so that is theoretically in here. And I did do that. However, when things started improving, when a lot of my issues with the add-ons got fixed, when I felt that the team was really doing a much better job with regards to service for the add-on, I resubscribed to Premium. So I subscribed to Premium. I don't want it to go away. I think it's a great service. So I'm not trying to, sink a ship that I'm floating around on myself here. That said, the add-on policy does explicitly state that add-on creators cannot charge for services related to the add-on, which TSM absolutely does. It charges for services related to the add-on. It charges for cloud backups, which back up your add-on files, and it charges for I don't know if you would technically, I don't use the Great Deal stuff, so I've never actually looked at how this actually interacts. However, from what I understand, it doesn't do anything in-game. It just alerts you to stuff that it finds, in which case I don't think that that's a problem. But as far as the fact that it will back up your add-on settings and you can bring them into the game, and you can make your add-on settings in the game and it backs them up for you, I'm pretty sure, that's some really gray area, and it is a service. The cloud backup for the add-on files is absolutely a service related to the add-on that they charge for. So I can't see any reading of this that TSM doesn't violate the add-on policy. So I'm happy that the MDT thing got sorted out, because I honestly think that if Blizzard was put into a corner where they had to crack down on add-ons being charged, people charging for add-on related services, that TSM would have been caught up in this. So I'm hoping that everything just blows over and everything is fine, because certainly the amount of development that goes into TSM is something that that definitely deserves some monetary support. That said, it's also true that, there's a lot of add-ons that we all use for free constantly, and most of us don't pay for. Big ones that I use LVY, I use DBM, I use WeakAuras. WeakAuras is huge. There's a lot of add-ons that the vast majority of the player base uses, and you can say, well, those developers aren't making any money and they should be paid for their money, for their efforts, and I find it hard to disagree with that. It's kind of tough because I want it, I just don't want to have to pay for it. If all of the add-ons that we used to play the game every day were something that we had to pay for, let's say that DBM suddenly charged $2. let's not even say it's a monthly. Yeah, I mean, most add-ons would be, let's say they require $1 charge to your Patreon, to their Patreon in order to use DBM. Weak Auras does the same. Rematch does the same. I have no idea what other add-ons people use. LVUI, $2 to the Patreon. And none of those individual add-on developers would be asking for too much. I think these add-ons are robust. They are useful. They greatly improve my gaming experience and the gaming experience of thousands, if not millions, of other players. I cannot make an argument that those developers should not be compensated for the great work they do and the great benefit they've brought to the player base. However, at the same time, the idea that I could find myself having to shell out $20 a month just to use various add-ons for the game just like blows my mind. And I'd have to start saying, well, I guess I'm not going to use LVUI anymore, or I guess I'm going to have to, keep a spreadsheet of what pet teams to use, because I certainly can't justify paying for a rematch. Etc. And so eventually I'd just have to, people who have money they can blow on add-ons for World of Warcraft would be able to continue to do so, while people like myself who really can't justify that expense would have to stop using add-ons that really make the game play. Like, it's one thing to say, oh, well, I wouldn't have LVUI, so it wouldn't be as pretty. It's another thing to say, oh, I wouldn't be able to afford to use Weak Auras. Weak Auras is such an integral part of high-level play that, like, the idea that you might someday have to pay for it would be absolutely crippling to so many players. So I'm in this kind of weird limbo where I want add-on developers to be able to monetize their work. However, I don't really like the idea of players having to shell money out of pocket. I think one thing that might be kind of interesting now is this is just, train of thought, just kind of blabbering here. I haven't thought very much strongly about it, but as I'm sitting here thinking about it, if they were to somehow integrate some sort of, I don't know anything about programming, but some sort of specific area where, let's say you wanted to open up your DBM option, so you type /DBM or Weak Aura /WA. If add-on developers were allowed to just put like a frame that holds an advertisement. It could be an advertisement for something. It could be an advertisement for their Patreon. Allow them to solicit donations. I don't have a problem with them asking for donations as long as they're not putting things behind paywalls. Ask them, let them ask for donations all they want. So as far as I'm concerned, so it's like they can either have, their own Patreon up there to ask for donations, or they can do stuff like Google Ad Space. So every time I type /WA and open up Weak Auras, I see a little, I know some people are going to hate this, but I don't really care. Google's already all over the place. Let me see if it's listening to me now. Nope, it didn't hear me say that. Okay, good. So and then every time I open Weak Auras, they generate a little bit of AdSense revenue. That way they can be getting paid. They'll get paid more the more people use their add-on, thus incentivizing them to make a widely used popular add-on. And then, and so they'll get supported. I still get an add-on that I essentially am accessing for free. I like this idea. And granted, yes, I do recognize someone would then write an add-on to block the ads from other add-ons, but that's a problem that we can deal with when we come to it. You know what I mean? Oh, and I did just notice as I'm looking over on my other monitor, point number 4, add-ons may not include advertisements. Get rid of that. Why not? Just, make sure it's not advertising objectionable material, which is, number 6 here, add-ons may not contain offensive or objectionable material, then I think it'll be fine. All right, moving on. Let's talk about what everyone actually gives a crap about. I'm trying to lower the profanity I've used this episode. Gold making. So, first off, I realized I forgot to answer questions on the last one, viewer questions, and I had a question from the one previous about making gold with alchemy. Alchemy is kind of screwed this week. As I'd predicted in the last episode, indeed, herbs did go through the roof on the servers that I play on. Widow Bloom went from, I think, 75 gold to it was 300 gold today, and so Alchemy is not profitable on my server right now. The one thing that you might be able to make some good gold off of is if you're willing to do the avowed rep grind, which you can just read up on it. It's a little hidden rep grind in Revendreth that is needed to make shade stones. Making shade stones can actually be pretty profitable. You need them to make every cauldron requires shade stones, and not many alchemists can make them because it's hidden behind that rep grind. So that is an option to be able to make some gold with alchemy. Other than that, the only thing I really do heavy gold making with alchemy is I do continue to make living steel every day on all of my alchemists, and then I use that for my engineers to make sky golems and geosynchronous world spinners and depleted caparium rockets, and then on my jewel crafters to make panthers. So I use a lot of living steel for a variety of things. But as far as making like potions and flasks, I just basically have TSM set up to craft them based on my minimum crafting percentages that I talked about in the last episode, and very rarely does it ask me to craft things, indicating that there's not a good margin on the servers that I play on for most potions and flasks. Now, in a more general sense, now that kind of question has been addressed, for Argent Dawn, I'm up to 2 million on top of the 10, so 12 million. I can do math, I swear. I had a really good run on mounts. I think I sold 2 Sky Golems this week, one of the combined Panthers, the Jeweled Onyx Panther, and like one other colored Panther. Let's see here. The other thing I just remembered the other thing I do with alchemy is I do, every week I do the transmute meat to pet, because you can, for both the Legion and the Battle for Azeroth, there are pets in that are specific to that. That's the only way to get them. There's the Transmutant from Battle for Azeroth. Sorry, not Battle for Azeroth, that one's Legion. I know the Transmutant is from that. I don't know if there's one from, if there's other ones from Legion. I don't do that one as regularly because the way to do that requires, so basically you do a Legion transmute for something else, and then you get these colored transmutagens. I think that might be what they're called. But anyways, you get this material that you then combine together to do the transmute meat to pet. And I don't have a lot of those laying around, so I don't do that one as often. However, the Battle for Azeroth one only requires 2 types of meat, as well as some bones. So you don't need to have them special on the Alchemist. You can just buy those off the auction house. They are relatively cheap nowadays, since most of the items that they are used for are not valuable anymore, so I just bulk bought a lot of it at the very end of Battle for Azeroth, and it just sits in my bank. I have TSM operations set up to mail the exact amount I need to each of my alchemists once a week, and I just do it as I do my daily living steel once a week. And I would say that I get one of the alchemy, so the Battle for Azeroth specific pets are the Gearspring Hopper, the Baby Krog, which is adorable, and the Gearspring Hopper, Baby Krog, and the little tick. I think it might be called a bloated blood feaster, but it's a little blue tick. And so and the cool thing is I can make those on Argent Dawn, and I sell them on Area 52, since you can make them on, you learn them on one server and cage them on the other. So that's actually a way to slowly move some gold over as well. And so those come from alchemy. I also have just realized I would be remiss if I did not mention the Vial of the Sands and or the true gold that you use to make the Vial of the Sands. That said, that has never been a market that I've been in because I just cannot bring myself to archaeologize enough to learn it on my alchemists. So that's not a market I have personal experience with, but I do know that it is a favorite among many gold makers that is very alchemy heavy. But like I said, alchemy has not been one of my big ones. On Argent Dawn, everything kind of remains relatively profitable. Mounts are going well. For whatever reason, same as last week, leatherworking is quite hot on both of the servers, especially Area 52. A lot of my blacksmithing weapons and then leatherworking armor sells really well compared to tailoring. I virtually never get a profit off of. I think probably because it's too easy to gather cloth, so tailors can make all their stuff pretty easily, and thus they sell it for pretty low prices. While I feel honestly, there's a quest today in Ardenweald to kill 12 gormlings, and if you just sat there and just skinned all day, you'd probably get so much leather. So it's not like that's hard to get either. But Maybe it's it is definitely the callus hides that are what goes high. And of course, because people are, snapping all that up to make the enchanted callus hides, it's probably what's keeping the price so high. I have just got my Area 52 leatherworker with enough rep to be able to make the heavy armor kits, so I'm excited to enter that market. I already have seen that the price hike isn't that, the margin, that's the word I'm trying to think of, the margin is not the best in the world. However, it is profitable. What I noticed from back before I could make it myself, when I would have to seek a leatherworker to make it, even on Area 52, huge server, it would be really difficult for me to find someone who could make it, because a lot of people just do not realize that there is a pattern on a vendor that they need to rep for, so they just simply don't even realize they should go get it. So that keeps a lot of people out of the market who might otherwise be in it. Jewel crafting remains absolutely hands down my fastest moving market on both servers. I don't even bother with the crafters marks because none of my jewel crafters are even 60, let alone able to go grind with Venari. But I just make the greens and the blue, the baseline blue quality. And I make 5 of every type, so 5 of each color of ring, 5 of each color of neck, on both servers. Without a doubt, within 10, I don't camp the auction house like I used to back in the day. I'll basically, when I first wake up in the morning, I'll restock the auction house, and presuming I have the energy, I will restock the auction house again before I go to sleep, and every time I get on, both servers completely sold out of the jewel crafting stuff, which should mean that I should maybe bump it up to making 10 of each, because you always want to have the inventory up so that people can buy it when they come looking for it. I mentioned last week that it was the first week that I was able to get the gluttonous feast recipe on Area 52. That continues to sell quite well. A pretty good margin as well. Particularly, there's a good rating scene there. I think that helps a lot. It is similar to the jewel crafting things in that I make 20 feasts and it's always sold out every time I go to restock the auction house. I've only just barely got that rep on Fade on Argent Dawn, so I will be entering the market there very shortly as well. We will see how that goes. I did not see a big spike in price on the missives. I should say, I didn't see a big spike in profit from missives. I expected to see missives go up this week because a lot of people are able to craft a second rank 1 legendary. Basically, if you crafted every week that you could, then you finished your rank 4 last week and you started another rank 1 this week. And so I think that the spike in demand for missives, which did happen, though not everyone necessarily needs to make another legendary right away. I, for one, was able to get my memories off these raid kills that you've watched tonight. So now I can make my next legendary, but I'm not going to use it for a while, so I'm just not even bothering until I can make it at a rank 4, because why bother? So a lot of people are probably in that boat, and then other people are just probably staggered, and maybe they'll make it next week. So there's not a huge spike in demand. However, there was some spike in demand. However, because of that, there was a spike in prices on the herbs that I've already mentioned. And as a result, because I didn't pre-buy a lot of herbs, the margin hasn't actually shifted all that much because I have to spend so much more for the mats. This kind of goes back in the day when I was constantly moving all sorts of inventory, just constantly. I would always, I'd keep a really close eye on materials, so I knew what materials should cost, and I would always buy them when they were at their low end, and so that then when I did craft with them, I always crafted at a profit. I don't really do that so much anymore. I'm definitely more in this concept of just-in-time buying, so whenever it's time to craft, I will basically buy the materials right then. If I happen to see a really good deal on a lot of stuff, if I'm like, oh man, I know how much that usually costs, this is a good deal, I'll get a lot right now, then certainly I can have a little back stock of something, but it's not common. I used to have guild banks full of, this is my meat guild bank, and this is my herb guild bank, and it's nowhere near that anymore. Now I'm much more subjected to changes in market pricing on the materials as well as the end products, but that's fine with how my gold making is going. I have actually gone up on Area 52. While before I had been gold neutral, I'd been sitting at about, I think, 1.6 million, and I'm up to 1.8 million on Area 52, which, given how few, because I've really bumped up my required profit before I'll craft stuff. So I only craft maybe 10 or so things every time I go through. I craft all the jewel crafting stuff like I mentioned, but I basically never do anything with alchemy on Area 52. I do the water walking shoes from Battle for Azeroth for your mounts. I do various blacksmithing weapons and armor, and some enchants every now and then gluttonous feasts, and that's basically it. And so the fact that I'm making a pretty suitable profit, certainly enough to not, and that's while also buying overpriced veiled augment runes and things to fuel my own Mythic Plus habit, has been really quite good. This was also notably, now that I think about it, this was also notably around about the first week that people would have hit Exalted with Venari. It might have been last week, particularly for Alliance with humans and such, but it was certainly the first week that I did it, and I only missed a few days of them all. And certainly I didn't miss any weeklies, and that meant that a lot of people were suddenly able to essentially buy 5 sockets for their gear. Now, granted, a lot of people might have been like me and only put sockets in the stuff that was, air quotes here, worth putting sockets into. But certainly that probably caused a little bit of a demand on the actual cut gems themselves. However, I'm spending all of my gems on making jewelry anyways, so I have made very few actual cut gem sales myself. But though I did have to cut quite a few gems for myself. This video is now very long, so we're going to cut it here. My goals for next week, I kind of shot, like I said, I shot past my 1K IO score to get up to 1100, which means that I've got a few timed 14s. I have 1 timed 12 left, and then a few 13s, and 1 depleted 15 on my record. So I want to start, I'm basically now at the point of, 14 are not worth it, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going to do a lot more 14s, and I'd really like to be seriously timing some 15s next week. Next week is an exceptional push week for Mythic Plus. That said, it's also the week that I have to actually go back to do work, which I haven't really been in a situation where I had to do a lot of work since Shadowlands came out. So I do need to not get too serious into push week when it is also work push week. So I've gotta get on that, but definitely gonna be doing some Mythic Plus as my major focus, because the affixes, if they are what the beta suggested they would be, are going to be very good for Mythic Plus. So thank you so much for listening, guys. If you have any specific questions about anything at all in this video, or any opinions you want me to just chit chat about, feel free to put them in the comments, and I'd be happy to address them. Thank you so much, you guys. Have a great day. Hope you're having a great new year.